Well, as y'all know, one of the concepts that I have hit on in this class many, many times is that concept of self-care. So you can probably imagine how thrilled I was with this week's readings when it hit very, very heavily on the therapist's self-care and being able to know one's triggers and those sorts of things. So while we're not going to regurgitate the information from the book, I definitely want to take some pieces from that and kind of flesh it out a little bit more and try and make it a little bit more personal and meaningful to you. So the first thing that I wanted to talk to you guys about was boundaries, and we did hit on that in the book. But where I want to go with this is setting up boundaries for your own personal mental health, physical health, self-care, all right? So as a helper, anybody in the helping field really, really has this genuine and beautiful, overwhelming urge to help other people. You wouldn't be in this profession if you didn't have a desire to help other people. But in that desire, like we've talked about in weeks past, oftentimes it's easy to be so involved and so desirous of helping other people that you do that at the expense of yourself. And so that's where boundaries come into play. Boundaries, essentially, now when we say boundaries, we go, oh, that's just a list of rules and things that I can do and I can't do. But I look at boundaries a little bit differently. I look at boundaries as like a fence. Let's say my hands here are fences. If we look at boundaries this way, what we know is that anything inside this fenced-in area is very, very safe. These are things that are stable for us, things that we know that we can rely on, things that are familiar to us. So when we set up boundaries, we're doing that really in an effort to protect us rather than giving a list of do's and don'ts that we can't have. Now, of course, our boundaries can expand to allow more into that, or they might need to shrink up a little bit and say, hey, you know what? I've been letting too much into this fenced-in area. It doesn't feel so safe anymore. I'm going to need to tighten that up, which means taking a few things out, okay? So the one thing that I wanted to really kind of speak to just for a second here is that when we've got boundaries and we pile on spirituality in the form of ministry, it can become almost a deadly combination. Because if you think about it, what was Jesus' example? Jesus' example was self-sacrifice. I'm going to literally give myself away to the point of being crucified on a cross and give and give and give at the expense of myself in some good ways because we're honestly helping other people. And Jesus' example was self-sacrifice. And so we as believers oftentimes look to that example and we say, well, if I'm truly a believer and if I'm supposed to be self-sacrificing and I'm in this helping profession, the word no really shouldn't be in my vocabulary. And the thought of taking time for myself actually feels selfish, and it almost starts to feel unchristian-like, that maybe it's a sin issue for us. But I want to encourage you to actually follow through with Jesus' example. Yes, he gave and gave and gave, and Jesus was the epitome of self-sacrifice. But the other thing I want you to notice about Jesus is that he prioritized specific things in his life that rejuvenated him, that encouraged him, that brought him a smile on his face, that gave him a sense of rest and gave him a sense of peace. Oftentimes, we find Jesus waking up early in the morning to pray, to spend time with the Lord first before he spends time with anybody else. We see Jesus having a group of 12 men, and then within that group, 3 or 4 men that were very much his support and his accountability. Now, there was other people that wanted to get into that group of 12 and that group of 3. But Jesus said, no. These are the people that I feel safe with. These are the people in my boundaries, and I've got to keep them there. To put other people in there is going to mean that I'm going to be giving out of the emptiness of who I am rather than the fullness of who I am. So we see that Jesus is self-sacrificing, and he gives of himself repeatedly. But he also has very, very clear and distinct boundaries as far as incorporating into his life the things that he needed. Now, the cool thing is that even though Jesus is God, he is God's son, and so he is sovereign. He really wouldn't have needed to sleep. He became human, which meant that he actually demonstrated what we as humans also need to find as important into our own life: community, taking time to oneself, all of those sorts of things. So what I would encourage you to think about with boundaries is to recognize what are your limits. And one of the ways you can recognize those is if somebody comes to you and asks you to do something or to spend time with them or to take another project on, what is your fear or hesitancy in saying no to them? What is it that you feel like would happen if you did say no? Why do you feel like you were expected to say yes? Start to ask yourself these sorts of questions and figure out where your limits are. To go, you know what, even though that person comes to me and they ask me to take this on, my gut says, oh, you don't have time for this. But I say yes anyways because I'm supposed to be self-sacrificing. And so in that, to go, what if I practiced a boundary? What if I limited myself just in that way to protect myself? What might be different? Might I have more energy to give? So really quickly, a personal example that I wanted to share with you is that I love helping people. And when you start a practice on your own, you kind of have to be a yes man. So if clients can come at a specific time, you take them. If they need whatever, you say yes because you're trying to build your clientele and you're trying to figure out this whole business thing. And really, you need those clients because you need the money. Okay? So as I started my practice, of course, this is what I did. It was yes, 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 yes. I'll take any client with any issue at any time of the day. And that might mean that I have one appointment at 9 in the morning and another one at 8 at night and, a lot of hours in between. But yes, I will do that. So I sat down with a good friend of mine who is a very business savvy and account finance savvy person, and he helped me design my whole business plan and goal setting for this year, which was absolutely wonderful. But at the end of that discussion, he looked at me, and he knows me very well, and he said, but here's the deal. He said, you've got a great business plan, you're ambitious, but you got to take care of yourself in here too. And he said he had gotten enough phone calls or emails from me saying, oh, it's Monday and I already can't wait for Friday to come because Monday had been packed with so many sessions. And so what he helped me do too is create basically a business self-care plan. So for me, what that looked like is I do counseling Monday through Thursday. Friday I don't see clients. I never have and I probably never will. I use that as a self-care day. I do my own therapy on those days sometimes. That might be a day where I can just stay in my sweats until 11 in the morning and drink a lot of coffee. What the other thing that it helped me with is to go Monday through Thursday. I feel very comfortable seeing clients late, like late nights, like after 6, 2 nights a week. So I chose two nights and I put them into my schedule and I blocked off the times that I wouldn't be there. And he said, here's the thing, if clients want to see you, they'll change their schedule around. Rather than you having to be all things to all people, they'll fit into your schedule. And what that allowed me to do is recognize, wow, I've not been taking care of myself. And by putting some boundaries around my schedule and my business, I was able to then do the things that I needed to do so that I really could be a better therapist.